Well, considering how much people didn't like Quantum of Solace, it must have been reassuring for them that with this film, James Bond didn't truly fall from grace. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my now overdue Daniel Craig James Bond review series, where prior to my review of No Time to Die, I'm discussing the rest of Daniel Craig's run as James Bond. And today we're going to discuss his third film, Skyfall. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's talk about Skyfall. This sees James Bond's loyalty to M, played again by Judi Dench, tested when her past comes back to haunt her. When MI6 comes under attack, 007 must track down and destroy the threat, no matter how personal the cost. So as I do with some of my reviews of older films, I am going to get into some spoiler territory for this movie. So, if you haven't seen Skyfall by now and you wish to know absolutely nothing, this is your spoiler warning. Go watch the movie, then come back to this. But anyway, here we go. This time, Sam Mendes takes over as director from Mark Forster, who, as we previously discussed, was given a bad deal, as he was trying to make Quantum of Solace in the midst of the writer's strike. But this time around, Mendes, the writers, and the rest of the cast and crew had ample time to work on this, with it being released 4 years after Quantum of Solace. And to compare, that film was released only 2 years after Casino Royale. This coincided with the 50th anniversary of the James Bond series, and the wait for a new film was definitely worth it, and a return to form for the series. The praise this received is essentially on par with Casino Royale, and I've even seen some people say this is actually better than Casino Royale. Now, I don't quite think that, but it's easily up there as one of the better Bond films. While there was some of the classic Bond elements in Casino Royale, this sees a lot more of those elements brought into the fold here. We get introduced to Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, along with Ben Whishaw as Q, both of whom were absent from the previous 2 movies, and with Q being brought in, we also get some of the gadgets that were a staple of the older Bond films, plus we get a return to having a great Bond villain, here being Raul Silva, played by Javier Bardem. And as the plot synopsis suggests, this sees M take on probably the most active role in any Bond film, with her arc being just as crucial to the plot as Bond's. As with a lot of the Bond films, we get a riveting opening sequence where Bond is pursuing one of Silva's henchmen, and M orders Moneypenny to take a difficult shot at the henchman while they're fighting, only for her to accidentally hit Bond, which she was initially afraid of. And M's decision haunts her all throughout the movie, with her boss, Gareth Mallory, played by Ralph Fiennes, pressuring her to retire, and this goes hand in hand with the emergence of Silva, who's revealed to be a former MI6 agent with a personal vendetta against M, as he's now become a cyber terrorist. And Judi Dench is great here. She's always been a solid M between the Pierce Brosnan films and the Daniel Craig films, but considering how much she's given to do this time around, this is by far her best performance as M, though it's unfortunately her swan song as the character outside of a cameo in Spectre, as she's killed off here, with Mallory taking over as M by the end of the film. But I'm at least happy to see someone who isn't just Bond or the Bond villain given so much development here, as that's something you didn't get to see all too often in a lot of the earlier Bond films. While there were recurring characters who've become staples of the series, they were always just there for maybe some comedic relief, or it was just custom to include them. But similar to Vesper Lynd in Casino Royale, we once again get a major supporting protagonist who's just as strong as Bond here, and I really enjoyed that about this film. Same with Moneypenny, whose name doesn't get revealed till the very end, but she even gets a solid arc of her own as she's troubled by the events of that opening act as well, as she was hesitant about taking the shot in fear of hitting Bond, and she's given more of an active role herself throughout this, which is great considering Naomi Harris is a highly underrated talent, and while she's not quite at the center of this film, she shines any moment we get to see her. Then there's Javier Bardem as Silva, who's probably one of the best Bond villains of all time, and definitely a contender as the best of the Craig run. He's neck and neck with Le Chiffre from Casino Royale for me personally, even though part of his backstory does have a little bit of that typical once a good guy but now out for revenge trope. Bardem's someone who always gives 110% for every role he's in. And here he plays Silva with a mix of brutality and eccentricity, giving him a presence that truly stands out in that classic Bond villain form. So it makes any familiar elements about his character not feel like a big deal, as I absolutely loved his performance here. And I also can't forget about the man himself, Daniel Craig. As always, he's just at the top of his game here. As I said in my Casino Casino Royale review, he's neck and neck with Sean Connery for me as the best Bond. He really might just take the cake the more I think about it. He once again plays it very cool and charismatic. There's a return to that quippy humor by the character that was lacking in Quantum of Solace that I really appreciated, and he was just a blast to watch each time we saw him. And while the story isn't 100% his this time around, he still manages to bring out a lot of emotional intensity to the role where needed, especially when he's trying to get back into the field after laying low from the opening sequence. We see him struggle with undergoing these psychological examinations, and it tears him apart. Craig once again just crushes it in moments like this, as we see some of the inner turmoil of someone who we normally view as kind of a badass in his own way. It's really well done here. And this film's not only just great from a character perspective, but from an action standpoint. It wasn't quite as obvious at this time, as most of his films until here were straightforward character dramas with only some action, but Sam Mendes is excellent at staging action, which is something we'd see later on in full display in his beloved 1917. But for his first time in a more action-heavy film, at least as a blockbuster, he does really well here. After the Jason Bourne-esque fight scenes of Quantum of Solace, we get a return to the slick, stylish, fun fights that were reminiscent of Casino Royale. There's not an over-reliance on the action, but every time a big fight came up, it felt pulse pounding and on the edge of your seat. And when it would shift from these moments to quieter, more somber periods, it never felt jarring, so I like the balance on display here. And then of course there's another major staple of the Bond films, and it's the opening song. And for the first time in Craig's run, it's a song whose title matches the name of the movie, which is Adele's Skyfall. I'd say it's a toss-up for me between this and Chris Cornell's You Know My Name as my favorite of Craig's themes. For the longest time, it was my favorite, no questions asked, but thinking back on it now, it is close. It might still be number one, but it's definitely close. But this just hits every single time I hear it. Adele's vocals are absolutely powerful. The chorus is not only catchy, but haunting, and it sets the tone beautifully for this film. It gives us an idea that, while still a Bond movie full of all the usual elements, it's a bit more reflective in nature, which, by the way, it balances those two aspects wonderfully. So this is just top-notch stuff. Now, as for criticisms, I'd say at 2.5 hours, you can feel that runtime a bit at various points. That reflective tone I mentioned earlier, while it works for the most part, it does maybe cause the pacing to slow down a bit too much at a few points. Not to the point of anything that I'd call myself flat out bored with the film, but I'd say some of its quieter moments don't quite hit as hard as I think I would have liked. Might be one of those things that comes down to personal preference, but I think this could have been like an even 2 hours or just over, and it would have flowed even smoother. Then there's also the third act, which for the most part I do really enjoy, but one element that I always found a bit distracting is when Bond and M go to Skyfall, which is Bond's childhood home, and they meet the gamekeeper Kincaid, played by Albert Finney. Now, for those who don't know, the producers were originally thinking of having this role filled by Sean Connery, who was already retired by this point, though it would have been for Bond's 50th anniversary, and it would have been a way to honor his run as the character, though they decided against it as they called it distracting. Yet, the funny thing is, Kincaid's presence, when he first appears, it's still played as some sort of big reveal in its own way. It was still played up as if this was Sean Connery himself playing the part. Just the way he makes this grand entrance, it made it feel bigger than it really was. And I get that Albert Finney's a legendary actor in his own right, and this is no disrespect to him, as I think he's absolutely phenomenal, and I enjoyed him here. But the way this film goes about introducing his character, who's someone we never even heard of until this point, and was honestly someone who really didn't do too much to move the plot forward, in a way, it was a bit distracting, which I know they were looking to avoid. And maybe that's more of a nitpick, but it was one of those things that I could never truly shake about the film. Again, not one of those things that brings the movie down completely or anything, but the execution makes this moment kind of stick out like a sore thumb. Skyfall is a return to form for the Bond franchise after the very polarizing Quantum of Solace. It manages to incorporate a lot of the classic Bond elements while still giving them all a fresh spin that makes them feel compelling, especially its use of long-running side characters. It contains another fantastic lead performance by Daniel Craig, one of the best Bond villains in recent memory, slick action, a memorable song, solid direction, and a strong emotional core. And overall, it makes for one of the best James Bond films. Skyfall gets an 8.5 out of 10. No matter what your thoughts on Quantum of Solace were, I think we can all agree this is a major step up from that. And next up, we're going to talk about Craig's fourth film, Spectre. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Skyfall, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Is this one of your favorite Bond movies? Is this one of your favorite Sam Mendes movies? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.